brings us on to the question of will we ever outgrow war in any shape or form. So still, we're not talking about crimes and that sort of
just like individual acts of violence.
Sure, we're not talking about that. We're talking about countries fighting countries for various reasons, either through clandestine type things or open conflict. But let's consider those both separately if you want.
Yeah.
So let's say open conflict. Will
conflict?
Will humanity ever stop? Have no reason anymore, or just not do it anymore to have open conflict? You go like, I don't know, in 2,500 or something.
Yeah,
like that.
Sure.
And at that point, you know, you've had 100 years and there's not been a single example of open conflict.
Yeah. So a common answer to this is like, oh, it's in our nature to always fight.
Yes.
It's in human nature. You know, we're always going to be fighting because we're just like that. You know, our animal instincts or whatever. I mean, it's certainly true that from an evolutionary standpoint, you know, we are as social animals, we do have a tendency for in-group, out-group sort of tribalism and fighting. Yeah. And it probably served a pretty useful purpose back in the day.
Oh yeah, sure.
Back in the wilds of ape days.
Sure. No, yeah, definitely, and it serves that purpose. You know, we see in lots of different animal species. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think just because historically it's been in our nature that it means that it's always going to be around necessarily. No, and I think there are several possible futures or possible reasons why it might disappear entirely. I don't think any of them are like guaranteed at all. No. But if we go down some of these roads, like for example, just access to resources. If everybody in the world just had access to enough resources and energy to basically make everyone live comfortably in the way that we do in the West, I guess, but better.
Sure.
Just comfortably and happily.
Unlimited energy, unlimited food.
Unlimited food. Yeah, exactly.
And resources. Is there ever going to be unlimited, you know, like earth metals, earth materials? Oil. Maybe not oil.
Well,
but
oil.
Sure, rare earth elements and
rare
that
earth
sort of
elements.
Stuff.
I mean,
mining.
Asteroid mining.
Yeah.
I mean, you almost have like an infinite source of that kind of stuff if you can get out into space and start.
Rare earth element. I'm just wondering if there is any geological resource that would consistently never be evenly distributed, or at least not everyone is always going to have enough of it.
Yeah, that's possible, I guess. I'd not really thought about that before. But you think that we'd be able to think our way out of that, you know, eventually. That like the technological development, we get to a point where that isn't such a problem.
Sure.
That's just such a hand-wavy answer.
I think I mean, we're thinking far into the future now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really far into the future.
Yeah.
So.
And if we've had something like an ASI, as we've just been talking about.
Yes, then that's.
Not one that's just doing its own crazy thing, but one that's working with us and one that we're using, that's augmenting our like experience.
Sure.
And our lives. Then we will be able to probably engineer our way out of limitations like that.
You would have thought so,
yeah.
Sure. So I think with an AI, an ASI type scenario, then I think war would probably quite quickly end. There wouldn't really be any point there.
Yeah.
It would be pointless.
I mean, we're already seeing pockets of the world where, you know, open conflict doesn't happen anymore. Like Europe, for example.
Sure.
Sort of the entire Western world, really.
Western Europe.
Yeah.
Wasn't that long ago that there was some...
Yeah, that's fair enough. Western Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Ukraine isn't...
Sure.
Russia and Ukraine aren't particularly happy right now. Western Europe, add the US into that as well, and Canada.
Mm-hmm.
That, as a group, has been pretty... I mean, they were not fighting amongst each other now.
No, for a long time.
So, you know, if that kind of level of development extends to everybody...
And yes,
and part of the reason is that we're just also that we just all depend on each other so much for economy.
Yes, I was going to say it's not just about comfort; it's about interdependence.
Yeah.
I can just I see that tending to grow outwards.
Yeah.
That axis of alliance between those countries, continuing to envelop Europe and then eventually the rest of generally the world as just kind of a whole. It sounds kind of lame, but like one kind of unit of
Well, that is the thing. We are trending towards like a global civilization, and the internet's helping massively with that.
Sure. And
a global civilization, just by its very nature, is interdependent and can't be just fighting itself all the time. That's just too detrimental to the health of the whole thing.
Yeah. See, I'd like to see something, on the internet, because there are some barriers still, even on the internet with like language and stuff. Imagining a browser type suite from probably someone like Google, where you have the option to translate things, where it doesn't even say that anymore. There's no need. You just see everything that comes through from Chinese source, with all the Chinese alphabet and stuff, or Japanese, where you can't read it, or Russian. But it comes through and it's just English straight away, and the translation is so good, and it's vice versa for them. So the whole thing is just an even playing field. Yeah,
and the translation is, as you're right, the translation is so good that it's not just like sort of derped, like fuck does that mean? It's actually like properly, there's meaning extracted and put into your in a way that you can understand.
Sure.
Yeah, a level playing field. Yeah. That'll massively help.
Those types of things. Yes, I think will help stop that in-group, out-group thinking, and stop and forgetting that as well. Everything will just become too interdependent in terms of resources, in terms of economies relying on each other. So I imagine, even without an ASI type scenario, it trends towards a world, and we're talking again really far future, where it's just not necessary.
Yeah, although there are some pretty divisive ideologies that exist in the world now. If they don't disappear, will still be around and still drive people to try and kill other people.
I think you're right. I just kind of, as countries become more developed and people have opportunities to stand up for their own rights and stand up for their voice and things, those ideologies they're old. They kind of die
and they're less attractive to people.
They're less attractive.
They don't draw in recruits essentially.
I mean,
they'll start to get viewed more and more as a kind of like archaic craziness that they probably should be viewed as now.
Yes, I think that's generally the trend of. Well, it seems to have happened in all the developed countries.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah,
there's no example where it's not happened like that.
No,
I mean there are examples where countries have regressed or cultures have regressed somewhat in their development, but never when you get to the kind of level of development that's prevalent in the West.
Yeah,
or in somewhere like I don't know, Japan or something. They tend not to regress to more superstitious beliefs. Generally don't.
Yeah, that's very true.
There's almost no examples, and if there is one or two, they're much outweighed by the counter example.
That's a very good point.
So I wouldn't be surprised if you were able to push everyone in that certain development level, and everyone was uplifted to the same level. I would not be surprised if a lot of the very conflicting ideologies they smooth over, like we were saying.
Yeah. They just start to seem just like, why were we ever taken in by this?
Yeah,
I think as what you were saying, opportunities is a big thing. Like people will have opportunities to like learn and do things they want to do and like pursue lives that they want to pursue.
Yeah,
they won't be so stuck into just the kind of day-to-day struggle of survival or whatever.
So technology is technology sort of a savior?
I think so. I mean, I sort of go along with that. For most things, I think we will think our way out of if we're not too late for it already, we will think our way out of almost all of our problems. I hope. Or
build something that thinks its way out of it.
Yeah.
It's just the same thing as thinking your way out of it. Sure. I do. Whenever we think about this, and it sounds like a utopia, I kind of then immediately take a step back and go, "Is that too? Are we being too optimistic?
Too rosy? Yeah.
Is it too, just because that when has that ever happened before? But like you say, there are.
It doesn't need to be like a shiny, glossy utopia though for war to stop, for open sort of giant conflicts like we see now
to stop,
to have ended. I mean, a nice shiny utopia would be pretty sweet, but something like, and I don't mean culturally really, but something like what we see in that kind of region that we were describing earlier, the West, that kind of relationships between countries just extending over the entire world. There's still going to be problems with crime and pockets of, tensions or whatever, but actual warfare is a thing of the past, I think, once you have the whole world in that kind of interdependent, interconnected,
resource-rich state.
Yeah.
I don't have a good counter argument really for that not getting to the case, apart from the fact that apart from the idea that maybe there is always some disparity in you have these isolated regions that they become interconnected, but they never fully envelop places in the world for some reason. They never no matter how much technology, those places are not able to be sort of culturally uplifted to a kind of level of technology where they're happy to stop.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess it's possible that it could go the other way, and you get even bigger separation between developed and developing.
That's what I mean. That's why. Yeah, exactly. So they're just two different worlds. Maybe. Who knows?
In that situation, I think you will still see conflict.
Yeah, but I kind of still think that even in countries where you don't have that, I don't know. I'm not really sure. I'm trying to sort of figure my way around it. I mean, we're thinking of like I said, it's an idealized view of the world. I'm trying to think in sort of say let's say sub-Saharan Africa. Okay, as an area of the world that has struggled to develop for various reasons. Is there going to be? Is that all going to be converted to sort of, resource-rich, shiny cities where everyone don't work jobs and it's kind of an autonomous society that's I'm imagining like a futuristic kind of version of New York or something.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine, isn't it?
It's hard to imagine, but then I guess why not?
Yeah. You just need to make sure that these huge sort of labour-saving technologies that are probably around the corner in the next few decades get distributed properly. Otherwise, you will end up with this huge imbalance. And there's no guarantee that they will be distributed fairly.
No.
Properly.
I mean, we are in the kind of age of altruistic kind of billionaire type things.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the like philanthropy that's done. And the stuff that makes a difference is, people like Bill Gates and those types of people. So
yeah,
I mean, maybe those.
A few more like people like that.
Yeah,
with a ton of money and that want to use it for that kind of thing.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
but is it?
Is technology the only answer to the issues there? Maybe, or the root, like a root that addresses the roots of so many of the issues.
That it. I don't know what the roots of the issues are. Is the problem? So.
Yeah, who knows? I mean.
Yeah.
I'm sure some people know.
I don't know.
Have a much better idea than I do.
No. I just mean not every. If everyone knew the roots of every problem, I guess
there would be no problems.
Well, not necessarily. I suppose some problems the root cause, but you can't solve it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I still would push towards a world that war is greatly reduced anyway.
Well, I mean that's the trend anyway that we're seeing.
That just seems to be the trend generally. I mean,
death from war is down. Then over the last century, since the big world wars, has been decreasing. I mean, there've been little blips, and actually there's a blip right now, an increase. I think the last 2 years.
Sure.
But the general trend has been a decrease.
Yeah, it's quite I think it's quite a small general trend though. So as in most of it's kind of flat and wavy, and then there's like a small. If you could potentially pull out, and actually it's not a downward trend; it's just a sort of dip down.
Okay.
I don't know, but I would still presume that we would get less war.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Well, we're asking if war would disappear totally.
Yeah.
In an ASI type world, I think yes.
Yes.
But in any other type of future society, I still think it's hugely reduced. Hugely.
Yeah, hugely reduced, and you can imagine if we really play our cards right.
Say like
you
a
can
million
imagine,
years in the future.
I mean, a million years in the future.
And there's no ASI type things.
Who the fuck knows?
Apparently, it's just still been too hard to figure out how to build like a brain in a jar.
We're all just going to be living in a virtual world at that point anyway.
Well, yes, but will every in a million years? I mean, God.
I mean, a million years. That's enough time for our species to be just radically different.
Yes, quite a lot of evolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so hard.
Well, another
1,000 years, say.
A theory that gets floated around and has some academic weight from certain regions is the idea that humans will kind of breed themselves into two races. Is in the sense that firstly, or into two species, in fact, possibly that. Probably that can mate, but possibly can't even mate.
Reproductively isolated.
Yes.
Yeah.
In that you would get all the races blend together, okay, and everyone goes a sort of like slightly tan skin, just a mixture of all the races.
Yeah.
As everything gets globalized, and then from that point, you get people who, as they do now, people select their partners based on positive traits. So someone with more positive traits is more likely to get a partner and breed with a partner that also has lots of positive traits. And so you end up with the separation of the human species basically to like short, not very intelligent sort of type of human and a very tall, very intelligent, very good looking type of human. And they split off that way. Yeah. There's some suggestions. And that could cause, it wouldn't be much of a conflict between them because there's definitely one side that would win and one side that would lose.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that could happen if the only factor there is normal, sort of biological, vertically transferred evolution.
Yes, I mean,
and we're not tinkering with the human genome, which we probably will be.
Which I think is more likely. I think at that point, a million years' time, I think all bets are off with traditional breeding. I think that is Darwinian evolution.
Yeah, I think that is a very logical extrapolation
of Darwinian.
I reckon that's very likely.
And society is still, as people I think tend to forget or tend to, Darwinian evolution has not gone away in human society.
No,
the sort of survival of the fittest is not what Darwinian evolution really is. Fittest, it's not. It's gene fitness. It's not. It's just whether you pass on your genes. It's not like because some of the weaker people are now being saved by human society does not mean anything to do with Darwinian evolution disappearing. It's still going on. But when you get to a point. And maybe this is a different conversation we could do like a topic on.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
You get to a point when you're designing your offspring, designing the genes that are passed on, etc., etc. Yeah. That is not Darwinian evolution anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so then all bets are off, and you probably. I mean, then you breed a race of very intelligent, very sort of stable, very happy people. You would probably. Once you've got it perfected,
and that's another technological factor which could feed into the eradication of war. Yeah, it's just we just engineer it out of ourselves. If there is some kind of intrinsic
engineer aggression out of I mean aggression.
We just get rid of it.
Sure, aggression is a trait that's brought on by both nature and nurture.
Sure,
of course, but.
And it's useful, people are more in some situations.
Yes, but people are more genetically disposed to becoming aggressive or not aggressive. You see this in any. Breeds of dogs tend to be more aggressive. You breed those traits to be prominent, and you select them on those traits. You could easily, if you knew what you were doing and you were allowed to genetically modify humans, then you could. And presumably eventually engineer a society where everyone's on kind of a level playing field and everyone's very successful, and you're getting very high levels of technology that sort of solve a lot of problems. Yeah. So, in that scenario. If those types of when we're talking like when I said like a million years in the future, people those types of technology are available.
A few thousand. It's already you're getting. It's hard to imagine. A few thousand. I mean, a million is just so ridiculous.
Yes. Sure, but those types of technology could well be available to everyone and anyone in global society.
Yeah.
And so everyone would kind of get to a point where in that far in the future, imagine there's no races. Okay, no, whatever defines races. There's no distinct lineages anymore.
Yes.
Of humans, which there are distinct lineages of humans based on the continents and things, and how they've gone down their own lines from being isolated. But imagine they're gone, and imagine there's a kind of a uniform global population where everyone sort of looks the same.
Yeah, there's a bit of personalising, but that's all down to like your individual choice or whatever, you know, rather than your
You still have cultures
heritage.
and things, different cultures, but
yeah.
Well, you have probably less individual cultures. Everything's more globalised.
Everything will be much more globalised. There'll probably be pockets of culture, but yeah, they wouldn't be quite as developed as they are now, you'd imagine. You know, and that's not necessarily a negative thing.
No. So I think in that situation, you do end up with no war at all.
Yeah. That's a long way down the line.
Well, we're talking a long way down the line, though, aren't we?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a global civilization basically dedicated to just human happiness.
Yeah,
like,
which is
it's like John Lennon's dream, as you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is something that's like a logical. You take technology forwards,
and you take human evolution forwards.
Yeah, and we don't do something terrible in the meantime, or something really bad happens that sets us back loads. But all that does is set us back rather than stops it.
Is
entirely.
this an inevitable endpoint? Is kind of what we're saying. If you assume any level of improvement in the war, amounts of war happening,
I reckon it is
probably.
Yeah.